Hello and welcome to The Point of Everything. Today on the show are all three members of Poor Creature, Ruth Clinton, Cormac MacDiarmada and John Dermody. They released their debut album All Smiles Tonight via River Lea Records on July 11th. If you listened to last week's episode of the podcast with myself and Ciara, you'll have heard us call this one of the albums of the year. I know we're only in July, but I think it's okay to put that out there. It's absolutely brilliant. A heady mix of their own bands, Landless, Lankum and the Jimmy Cake, respectively, probably on top of a couple of other acts too. But Poor Creature is very much its own thing too, drawing on American old-time music and country songs that Ruth and Cormac would know from playing sessions around Sligo where they are based. Coming up, Ruth, Cormac and John talk about their other bands and how Poor Creature started up. We'll hear how John almost got into making traditional music, but then actually ran in the other direction instead, eventually forming what sounds like a screamo punk band with Ian Lynch from Lankum that might explain why John had to get vocal surgery a couple of years ago. We talked through a couple of the aforementioned songs as well as the stunning album closer Willie-O, so a listen through the album is recommended before we get into things, but you should be listening to that already, particularly if you listened to last week's episode of the podcast. We also wax lyrical about their producer, John Spud Murphy, who has worked with all of our favourite Irish folk and trad acts, from Lankum to Varro to E-Vagabonds, and of course is behind the Poor Creature sound as well. We then head off to Las Vegas and the Museum of Neon before closing by talking about Lisa O'Neill, who John Dermody also makes music with. Poor Creature have some tour dates coming up. They're around the UK and Belfast in September. I'll give you the tour dates. September 12th at the Duncairn in Belfast. The 16th, they're at the Attic in Leeds. The Portland Arms in Cambridge on September 17th. September 18th, the Larder House in Southbourne. September 19th, Strange Brew in Bristol. September 20th, they're doing Subterranean Festival in the Royal Festival Hall in London. And they're at Yes in Manchester on September 21st. And then cut to 2 months later, and they're doing a headline show at the Button Factory in Dublin on November 27th. You can buy All Smiles Tonight at riverlea.bandcamp.com. The Lee is L-E-A. There's a link in the podcast description if you want to just click that. Before we get into the interview, just a note to say that myself and Ciara, who does the podcast with me every fortnight, we'll be doing the TPOE podcast at Love is a Stranger Festival at Ballyvillan House on the weekend of August 15th, 16th and 17th. We'll be chatting on the Sunday morning, I do believe, if you are around for that one. Love is a Stranger is from the same people behind Another Love Story, which is my favourite little festival, my favourite festival full stop. And the weekend features performances from the likes of Elaine Howley, Niamh Regan, Lulla Hush, Keelan Sherlock, all of whom have featured on the TPOE podcast over the years. For more on the festival, you can go to, and hopefully this isn't too confusing, anotherlovestory.ie/LIASBV. Love is a Stranger, Ballyvillan. Get it? Okay, let's get into the rest of the show. Here's Poor Creature on The Point of Everything. So I guess before we talk about Poor Creature, maybe we'll talk about your other bands first. You all come from various other bands. Ruth, maybe I'll start with you, because when this episode comes out, it'll be about a year since the release of Landless's second album, Lurk, critically acclaimed. People love that album. How are you feeling a year on from releasing that album and everything Landless in your life?
Yeah, good. It's hard to believe it's a year. It's ticking away slowly. I guess everyone's got a lot on, so we kind of gradually get through and do the odd gig. We got a few now coming up for the summer, which is nice. And yeah, it's a slow and steady machine as it always has been.
Cormac, what about you? Lankum played a rare show last month for the Guinness Lovely Days Festival at the Storehouse. Did you enjoy
Yeah.
that show?
I did. It was hectic, and it's always a flurry. You know, when we were coming back off, I think that was maybe the third or fourth gig in the space of a couple of days, and then I had to go to France the following day. With myself and Ruth were doing a residency in the CCI Cultural Centre Ireland Day, so there was not a huge amount of time for it to settle and process. But and that was cool. It was really cool.
You were playing with Fontaine's DC. Had you seen them before?
Yes.
What did you make of them? Did you stick around to see
Never.
them?
I only caught a couple of bits. They were really cool. I find it difficult sometimes to I need to decompress basically post gig. So I only caught a couple of bits. Yeah, it was fucking deadly.
It's kind of amazing to see their rise, isn't it? And just like the devotion
insane.
that they have. But you guys kind of have something similar, don't you? People like absolutely adore you. I presume the whole place was singing back the words for you.
There was a good amount of singing back. I only remember flashes. I think because we were also just completely exhausted. Just that kind of two super early starts or three super early starts, and then early start to get back to Paris in time for this other gig. So it was
You're getting old.
getting old. Yeah, that's it.
I think if the In the Meadows one, the one in Kilmainham, you know, that was definitely where you would have seen that kind of that love and that energy sort of. I think for Lankum, I wonder if maybe it was quite a small capacity for that Guinness one, and I'd say I'd suspect it was probably a little bit more of a Fontaine's crowd than a Lankum crowd. I'm sure there's plenty of crossover, but given the fervour and the loyalty that the Fontaine's fans have, I'd say they were front and centre there. Do you know what I mean? For getting in for those tickets.
Yeah, they'll do whatever they can to see Fontaine's. John, what about the Jimmy Cake? We can't forget about the Jimmy Cake. It's been a while since you guys released music. I have it as 2017 when you released Tough Love on Penske Records. 2 20 minutes plus tracks. What's the state of the Jimmy Cake in 2025?
I look at. I mean, it's still dormant. People occasionally make some noises about wanting to get back into a room and stuff like that. I mean, 8 years is a significant gap, but it was an 8 year gap between two of the records, as I recall. I think Spectre and Crown into Master. So I'd never say never, but it's tricky enough getting people into a room at the best of times, and at this stage, I've a wee boy, and a few other bits on the go. So, but I've recorded an album with Miriam Ingram, who's another culprit in terms of certainly putting out physical records. It's been a good long time since the last one. She puts bits out online of her, but that's being produced by Dylan Ingram Roach, who's Waste Fellow and really good time, and incidentally Miriam's son. So that's very sweet. So looking forward to that whenever it does get out, and then just playing a bit of drums with whoever's entering into me radar at the moment.
So where does Poor Creature come into all of this? You're all busy with your own bands. How does Poor Creature start up? Is it tricky just the three of you getting together?
We try to incorporate it into our trips to Dublin, which we have to make every now and then. So we try and work in a practice where we can. And also, I suppose it's also been kind of spaced out until later in the summer and the autumn when we will actually have a proper tour. So we're not too busy right now, so it's very doable.
Yeah.
Cormac, tell me about how you guys all started. Where did the idea of starting a band up with John and Ruth come from?
It didn't. I don't think there was any kind of conscious decision to start a band. I think myself and Ruth just started, playing music together as we kind of always have done. We play American old time. Well, and we played a lot of traditional Irish as well before we started playing American old time together. But we moved to Sligo, and there's a couple of old time sessions here, which we go kind of pretty much always because it's fucking deadly. Then I guess we started tipping away at bits, and then the pandemic hit, and then we just had all this time to on a room full of instruments to kind of dick about. So we were just dicking about for ages and like accumulating sounds and kind of like just messing. It was deadly fun. And then eventually we were like, oh yeah, let's start a band. And then we came up with the name Poor Creature. And then we were working away in bits. And then it definitely felt like there was something missing. So we had the drum machine going, and then we asked John if he'd join, and yeah, everything just slotted together like perfectly then. And our first gig, I think, was a benefit for a greyhound, a friend of ours, greyhound that needed an operation, and John came in and played the gig, us not having practiced or anything, and yeah, killed it.
Was there an idea of like wanting to do something different from your other bands? Because it does sound a little different, Poor Creature, to the other stuff. I don't know, is it darker? Is it that kind of American sounds creeping in as well? Kind of country music too? Do you see that it has to be different from what Lankum, Landless, Jimmy Cake, whoever are doing, Cormac?
I guess it can't be a carbon copy because there's just like not it wouldn't be the end of the world if it was that, but it's not by virtue of us being three different people as well, and like naturally bringing different elements that we bring to the other bands within this. So it's probably by that criteria different.
It's probably to do with the instruments that we have in the house as well,
Mm.
or like we would have acquired over that period of COVID, like the organetta, which is this lovely vintage Italian synth, or the pump organ in the kitchen, or the theremin, all these or various instruments that Cormac's gotten, so would have fed into the decisions about the sound as well, rather than us setting out to do something specifically different from the other bands.
I mean, I guess I think of I mean, you do fit into the trad scene that's happening right now. But John, I wonder, like, do you kind of come from that world? Are you coming at it almost as an outsider looking in, kind of a thing at the trad thing? I mean, like, do you know the world that like Ruth and Cormac would know so well?
Well, me and Cormac are brothers, and we would have
I
started
was
playing.
wondering. I wasn't sure whether to ask or not. How stupid that question is.
Yeah,
Thanks
no,
for
no.
clearing that up.
But we started playing fiddle at the same time as kids. Like my folks, there's a fault line in my family. The older sort of members of the family, which is basically myself and my brother Vinny and my brother Dermot, who are on the Jimmy Cake, and then I'm kind of the bridge because me, Cormac and Aoife, all my folks got us fiddle lessons when we were kids. And to my eternal regret, I stopped playing when I was about 12 or 13 because I was getting self-conscious. So I moved over to electric guitar, and then when I started a band, I started playing the drums because we didn't have a drummer. So like an understanding of it, but yeah, I'd be outside of it in that like I couldn't sit in a session or anything like that. I've got fiddles in the attic that are there for my sort of retirement. But like by the same token, like I've a fairly good grounding in it, and I think like you know we talk about trad, but like I mean, what we're really talking about in terms of Poor Creature is more, I guess, people's experiences, yes, but the focus is probably a little bit more on kind of country music and songs within the traditional arena, and then it's what people are bringing to that makes it less canny, a bit odder, and I suppose that kind of like layering of people's influences, but also I think the skills that people have sort of built on, you know, like for me, like I once one of my favorite things I've ever done was playing very briefly, in a sort of a tribute to Dolly Parton. So I had to learn like 35 Dolly tunes, um, and I had a beforehand I would have had an armchair appreciation, but after the fact I'm like, this woman is a bona fide genius and a stunning songwriter. Like, do you know what I mean? And I do relish the opportunity within this as well, because I would have been quite dismissive in the past to things like country and Irish. But if you take you take a song like All Smiles, like it's stone brilliant. But unless you're afforded the time to stop and engage quite in quite a bit of detail with something, you don't necessarily get to appreciate it for what it is, or in great depth. Like, do you know what I mean? So that's my thing. And for me, in terms of arrangements, like, I'm coming to it very much just as a drummer and a percussionist, and I'm seeing where I can bring something to it, or where I can add a bit of foundation. But like with the other two, you have like very well established, formidable arrangers. Cormac's work with Lankum and Ruth's work with Landless is pretty phenomenal. So what's really lovely and really exciting for me, I suppose, is just to see and to watch and to kind of experience how those things are brought to a different arena and are marshaled in a different way, and it's, there are threads and there are themes, but it's quite different because it's different people doing different stuff with different material, which is cool.
Just sticking with one thing that you said there, being self-conscious about playing the fiddle when you were 12 and putting it down. Are you being like self-deprecating, jokey there, or is that like genuinely what happened?
No, like literally, I was a slightly awkward teenager, and I was like, people can see me through the window. I'm not having this. Fucking idiot, like. And like the problem is, like, I've only ever had a passing association now with melodic instruments, and so it's really frustrating because if I'd have stuck with it, I'd be a far better arranger. I'd have a far more sort of holistic approach to 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 the whole thing. Whereas I'm a little bit ghettoized in the percussion side of it or whatever. Like I've and don't get me wrong, like I can do a bit, and there's probably a bit of self-deprecation in it, but like it's a frustration of mine that there's no harmonic instrument that I can play well.
It's a frustration of
And look,
mine that I can't play in time. So we need each other.
I think I'd murmured at one point about like putting the fiddle down, and my parents were like, not a fucking hope.
It's worked out. It's worked out.
In fairness, I am thankful.
Ruth, like, is there an American country element that's been there in kind of the trad stuff that we've seen coming out of Ireland in the past 10 years? I mean, like, how focused did Poor Creature want to be in kind of pursuing that element? Nothing kind of jumps to mind thinking about like bands like Oxen, Lankum, Vagabonds in terms of that kind of country side of things that John talked about.
Yeah, maybe I think there'd be a bit of an old time thread. Well, I suppose Cormac obviously has played some old time for Lankum. Oxen, like Rady would definitely be into that. And with that band that Rady, Cormac and Brian had, Brian Flanagan, Brew, there was a sort of an old time, I wouldn't say country, but old time moment there. I think it's pretty just is that a word? Circumstantial? That we were thinking about these songs kind of for our session in Sligo.
Hmm.
So not necessarily with a view to kind of arranging them or taking them somewhere else. It was sort of like breezing along. These happened to be the songs that we were engaging with at that point in time and are drawn
And
towards.
it's also that like in the session there's a double bass player and there's a five-string banjo player, and it's just like, oh, all these things are quite conducive to that kind of thing. So it's like, oh wow, we could have a really lovely realization.
The country songs do the heartbreak so well.
Yeah, exactly. Schmaltz and heartbreak.
So you guys, Cormac and Ruth, are still playing in a session in Sligo, and is that kind of how Poor Creature developed since lockdown?
No.
No,
Contrary to what
I'm
I
still
just said.
figuring out the story. You've got to explain it every step of the way to me.
um, what happened? I suppose so because we were doing the session and thinking about that music and those songs, that was in the back of the mind, as opposed to maybe a period of time where we were in Dublin going to like the night before Larry got stretched or the Goleen and hearing a lot of traditional Irish songs. So there's a slight emphasis shift, as well as living in the Northwest where country and Irish is huge. So you can't ignore that. Um, but I suppose coming out of COVID, and because we did a couple of things, videos, live, those kind of things at that time, that sort of morphed into then like in-person performances, and then we were getting asked to do other gigs. So it kind of grew organically in that way. So they're kind of parallel sort of things, if that makes sense.
Okay. So there are how many songs on the album? There's 8 songs on the album. Can you remember the first song that you worked on that you were like, oh, this is what we want the band to be?
It was the first 3 songs we ever did was the Ghost of Willie-O, because I got the theremin and I was playing around with playing bass foot pedals along with the theremin, and then Cormac joined with viola on that, and then the other 2 simultaneously were All Smiles Tonight and The Whole Town Knows, which is the country and Irish Philomena Begley Ray Lynham song that we were putting together for a soundtrack for a radio play that I was writing with a friend, Neve Moriarty. And for those, we were using the drum machine from the organetta, and yeah, that more expanded country sound, I suppose. They were the first 3, but maybe Cormac, do you remember more?
Well, I think also with the organetta, I think putting it through just a bit of distortion as well, and I think it very much helped lend a quality to the sound, like a slight industrialness, as well as the kind of slightly country and old time American feel to it. The other ones, Loreen, I had basically, I think I'd heard a documentary or podcast about the Louvin brothers, and maybe had heard some bits in the radio, and then I just pursued, and they're amazing. And then I had a really bad back break during lockdown, and it was just on extremely heavy opiates and a back brace on a couch, so everything kind of slowed down and got a little bit wonky. So I think there's a certain degree of that within that song.
Well, let's stick with Willie-O, which is the closing track on the album. I thought that maybe we talk about this last, but just since you say that it was one of the first songs, let's talk about it. It's 10 minutes long, which is longer than any Landless song. Not quite as long as the final track on Falls, Lankum, and I guess pretty short for the Jimmy Cake. But man, what an incredible way to close an album. I mean, tell me what you do with this song. I don't really know the versions that you're drawing from for it, but how do you kind of make it into this 10-minute epic journey, Cormac?
Oh, Jesus. I think what had been initial in terms of the original arrangement is quite different from, like, you can kind of see in the early performances of it that it's bare by virtue of it just being 2 people. So I don't know. I think, like, often the songs do most of the work for you, and I think Ruth having come up with the slightly mournful bridges.
I think whenever I played you the little riff, if you can call it that, on the theremin, you were like, oh, I can hear this with loads of strings. And you could imagine all the layers of
Yeah.
viola and cello and fiddle and all that with the theremin, and it all kind of staggered. I think you were imagining.
Yeah, exactly. And slightly more ominous, I think.
Yeah, and then we gave it to John, and he introduced this crazy, excellent drum pattern.
Yeah, which I actually think is amazing, because it completely shifts it in a direction that I wouldn't have expected, because there's just a rigidness, industrial kind of feel to it, and especially because it's starting to, reach its zenith, and then it just falls apart at the very end in a really nice way. And I think that was also just made total sense for that to be the last track of the album by virtue of that.
Do you want to take up that story, John? Tell me about, like, when you got your hands on this and what you kind of saw in front of you.
Yeah, like, I'm always like I always have to be, like, really careful. You can get super enthusiastic about stuff and want to throw the kitchen sink at it, but for me, it's always a bit challenging when you're looking at something and it almost feels like it's nearly enough. So I think, trying to tie, like, a piece like that to some kind of sort of structured pattern just seemed a bit churlish. So, like, for me, I suppose what I was trying to do was just to create a little bit of, like, low end tension, like a counterpoint to all of that space, but without necessarily tying it to anything. So it's just a load of numbers. Do you know what I mean? And I'm like we mixed it quite low intentionally, so it's more of a, it's just a hint of, you know, of this sort of counterpointy sort of tension, but it sort of, for me anyway, it just sort of it sits in a way that it kind of like allows it to kind of drive forward a little bit as well. So yeah, for me, it's, you know, a lot of the time it is just trying to find the thing that adds without taking over. And I think there was like, I mean, across the album more broadly, I think it was always about trying to get these sort of rich arrangements, but without ever sort of engulfing Ruth's voice, which I think is captured just really, really wonderfully throughout the entire record.
Maybe we should mention here as well that producer on the record is John Spud Murphy. Cormac, you work with him for Lankum. Ruth, I'm sure that you know him well as well. But John, you go back like 20 years with Spud, do you?
No, not quite, but it'd be a decade. Like the first one, he came in midway through master, and he sort of took it home for us. And then he did Tough Love as well. And I just think actually the Tough Love thing's kind of interesting, because we were talking earlier about, you know, the sessions in Sligo, in terms of that being sort of instrumental in the Poor Creature thing. Like that last Jimmy Cake record was written for space. We were asked to play in the Joinery Gallery, and it's gone now, but it was in Arbour Hill in down the road there in Dublin 7. Just quite a small and enclosed space, and at the time we were like, you know, endless synthesizers and Junos and all of these, like, you know, very hot room filling sort of instruments, and we needed to do something that would fit in that room without absolutely tearing people's fucking heads off. So we did those sort of 2 20-minute pieces that are much more sort of focused and contained, and it was really cool to just go into a room with Spud and do that from start to finish, because he's got an incredibly good way of finding the space for everything to kind of sit. You know, we probably just say this quite a lot in interviews, but yeah, like we've all worked with him pretty much exclusively for a decade, and it's great that we have very similar sort of sensibilities. We like a lot of the same stuff, but he's incredibly adept in terms of his emotional intelligence as well. Like the guy creates really good space for people to do really good work. And I don't know that gets talked about enough actually in terms of engineering and production, but it's really important, because I think if you're not feeling comfortable, then you're going to be a little bit stunted in what you do. So it's not, I suppose for me anyway, it's not just that he's very, very, very good at what he does, that he's very sort of particular and very diligent and tends to do far more work than he's getting paid for, but it's also that like he fundamentally understands what's kind of needed for people to be at their best.
Yeah.
He's a remarkable fella.
He cultivates a very calm atmosphere in studio as well.
Yeah.
Like he knows when to push and he knows when to pull back, and it's like, yeah.
It must have been nice. I mean, I was at that Lankum show at In the Meadows last year, Cormac, where you had John Spud Murphy on for, I think, the first time on stage with you. Did it take much convincing to get him on? Did he enjoy it? Did you guys enjoy it? Can you remember?
God.
Hang on, here's a funny one, right? Because I don't think, was that the first one? We played the Hackney Empire in London, right? And it was I think it was the first time we were going to play False Lankum start to finish, and there was an emergency, and the person who one of our favourite people was doing front of the house could not be there, so Spud basically had to move all of his synths, his equipment and all that from the stage back over to the sound desk, and basically run front of house and monitors and play the gig in the biggest room that we played in London to date, with basically 3 or 4 hours to wrap his head around everything that needed to be done.
Yeah,
wild,
he killed it,
and he totally killed it, and it was amazing.
There's not a lot of people that could do that either, like without just melting.
Yeah,
literally.
It was lovely to watch in fairness, because everybody remained calm, which was probably really important. Do you know what I mean? Everyone's just like, okay, this is the new reality. Let's just do what we can to make this work. But what a guy. And he's had to do that once or twice since, not by virtue of emergencies, but just like Okay, yeah, we need both tonight. Fair play to him.
Let's talk about one of the other songs you mentioned was there from the start, Ruth. The Whole Town Knows. So this is a song based. It's based on a song by Ray Lynham and Philomena Begley in 1970s. I was looking them up. I don't know if I found the version that the song's actually based on, but it's very kind of what you would think of as like that American country music, isn't it? This duet that they're doing. It's like Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson type of thing. Is that what you and Cormac had in mind when you're singing this song together, this duet?
Yeah. We stopped short of that, I think. I was looking at the time because of this radio play for a kind of apocalyptic sounding country and Irish song, and the lyrics of that. I probably just found it by the lyrics first, I would say, because it is originally called "We've Run Out of Tomorrows," and then listen to it. And then, in fairness, like the melody's good, the harmonies are good, and then we had this cha 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 beat on the organetta through a delay pedal, I think, which gave it this kind of, I don't know, slowed down drum and bass quality or something. It went from there, I guess.
And lyrically, you mentioned in the press release that it also is more than just like this love duet or whatever you want to say about that. You say that it talks about how we can't go on living this way, which becomes a metaphor for the climate crisis and the general destruction of the planet. Is that something that you enjoy doing, kind of looking for these other meanings in these older tracks, Ruth? I guess you've kind of always done that with Landless, kind of updating like you talk about with Poor Creature, these centuries old songs and looking for maybe the modern day parallels.
I suppose I'm always struck by how contemporary these lyrics can sound. Obviously, that song's not particularly old, but in so many traditional songs, it feels like highly relevant because they're old
Mm-hmm.
themes, I suppose, of love or loss or emigration or all of that. The climate crisis coincidence was a coincidence. It was more after the fact we kind of realized that it may have taken on this greater other meaning, unintended by Ray Lynham and Philomena Begley. But it's nice to try and relate to these things in contemporary life. Yeah.
Like you mentioned emigration, and that seems to be a theme maybe throughout some of the songs anyway, maybe not all of them. Like the opening track on the album is Adieu Lovely Erin. I don't think you have to delve too far into that to kind of see the emigration parallels. Is that just like one of the issues that frustrates you about Ireland in 2025? Just this issue of all of the Irish who are going to Australia and the government is almost looking the other way. I mean, do you get angry about it, or is it just something that you just see this issue in the songs, if that makes sense?
Well, it's frustrating. We all have siblings who've had to emigrate. It is frustrating that it's not necessarily a choice for people, and that hasn't changed in 200 years. But we're lucky, Irish people are lucky that they can emigrate and they're allowed to
True.
go to other countries, It's a privilege as well.
Cormac, tell me about Loreen. We've heard you sing before. I think for the first time it was Lord of Bore and Mary Flynn off False Lankum. This is a similarly just absolutely beautiful song. You say that you're channeling Chantal Ackerman's News from Home. Tell me about singing this song, Loreen, which is just absolutely lovely, right in the centre of All Smiles Tonight.
Well, God, I'm not even sure because it's just quite a haze of arranging it because the original is kind of like Loreen, write me a letter, answer the last one. There's a a 1, 2, 3. You do it to it, and again it's that thing where you're like, oh, this is actually quite a sad song, and if you take out some of that kind of feel, it's quite it's tragic within a very personal level for the person who writes it.
You really disassembled that arrangement. It's like when we were in the studio and I was trying all these sort of complex sort of patterns to go along with maybe what Cormac's kind of left hand is doing, and it wasn't working. It was just too much. And then Cormac just says to me, "Why don't you just play the waltz?" I'm like, "There's no waltz in there. What are you talking about?" And it took me like fully half a day to wrap my head around the fact that there was still a 1, 2, 3 sort of in there. And if you listen to it now, it's like, oh, of course it is. But like, honest to God, I I couldn't make a head nor tail of it for a couple of hours, like, because
But I
I'd
think
never
that's
thought
what
about it in those terms, like.
totally. I think that's what's kind of cool about. There's a certain satisfaction that there's a resolution that happens there that only happens with the kind of when you have drums like that, because it kind of asserts itself. I get, and that's for me. That's some of my favorite like traditional tunes would do, and some of my favorite old time tunes would do as well. And there's almost like a it's like a sleight of hand almost, because they're this often they're this sometimes they're the same bars, but it's just an emphasis thing. And with old time, it's not that they're the same bars, it's actually that there's an extra bar that's used to, I don't know if it's used for dancers to get back into their place or whatever. But it's the same, similar to Tomorrow's. It has a similar feel for me, that it's there's a delayed resolve in it, or resolve that kind of eventually it's all about hitting that last note and beat, and there's a huge amount of satisfaction for that, because it anchors things within a different repetition, and it yeah.
Do you enjoy singing tunes like this? I mean, I think people were probably surprised to see you on the last Lankum album singing that song. Like, oh, Cormac is singing a song. And I mean, you play it live all the time. It's always one of the highlights of the live set. Do you enjoy just singing for people, singing in your sets?
in the in
I know I
it's
always
always
laugh from everyone.
it's always a relief with Lankum when I get fucking through it, to be honest. And it's always a little bit of a dread, because I'm just like, all right, it's 4 songs away, all right, it's 3 songs away, and so forth. So I do enjoy it, like, but I really enjoy when I've done it well, and I can finally go, I can breathe, and like I love singing. I sing like in sessions, I sing in our old time sessions,
You
and
sing at
we
home
sing a lot of harmony
constantly.
and this.
You sing your life at home. You make
I
up,
sing my life at home. I really do. Yes, at any given moment, I may be singing about a thing that is happening, a thing that is not happening,
and they're all
whatever.
incredibly catchy songs, which is
John, did you keep up the singing? Like, I mean, if you put down the fiddle when you were 12, I mean, did you sing like in sessions or anything like that yourself?
My voice.
No?
Um, so me, no, so I played, like, I went into kind of punk bands. So me and Ian from Lankum had my second ever band was a band called the Gougers with Ian, and it was kind of street punky sort of stuff. So I shouted in those bands. But I've since had some surgeries on my vocal cords, so I have a very limited range at this point. So I've been known to do a shanty, in a session, but by and large, I do not sing, and that's okay. That's okay.
Ruth, tell me about your video making. I think that you made with Cormac the videos for the 3 singles so far. Maybe we'll focus on All Smiles tonight, which features you having a lot of fun in Las Vegas, which is unexpected. I don't think of Poor Creature as this glitzy Las Vegas band. Tell me about Las Vegas and the fun you had there, and the idea behind the video for All Smiles tonight.
we're just angling for a residency in Las Vegas. That's what this is about. Yeah, we were just there on holidays, really. In March it was, I think. And then if you're gonna be in these, because while we were over there, we also filmed for the Whole Town Knows video as well. Because if you're going to be in these amazing, very different to Sligo locations, you might as well make the most of it, I think. For I don't know, if I'm ever trying to make a music video for myself or others, I like to like listen to the song with my eyes closed about 3 times and see what pops up. And I had very definite like colors in my head for All Smiles Tonight, a very particular aesthetic, and similarly for The Whole Town Knows. It was very defined. So then realizing that we were going to be in California, that we could just head over to Las Vegas. A friend had told me about the Museum of Neon, where they have all these amazing old reclaimed signs from around Vegas in this outdoor park. So we wanted to visit there anyway. And then they let us film after hours. I think we went there around like 11 o'clock at night. And it rained for the first time in like 360 days
Yeah,
in the desert.
364 days. And
Oh my God.
I was so cold, but it was worth it. We got the shots, and then we went out to the desert to Valley of Fire, it's called, to film in this ridiculous rocky bright red landscape for the other video. Yeah.
it's mad as well because like I think we were quite lucky insofar that Vegas was quiet relatively, and it wasn't searing heat. And even when we were going back, we went back to the next spot, back to LA, I think, on the Friday, and just the line of traffic was nearly going back to the next state, going into Vegas. And even when we were filming the Valley of Fire, I think that like they had to shut that. I think they had to shut off the paths during the summer because it gets so hot. So we were lucky to kind of hit it in that Goldilocks zone.
So that's Poor Creatures' travel tip. Is it go to Las Vegas in March?
March on a Wednesday, if
Yeah.
possible. Yeah, I was
Get back on the
great.
Friday.
Exactly. And then it's so lovely. Then you can come home and edit all your footage and remember your lovely holiday. And they're filmed in Sligo as well. So
You're releasing the album on River Lea Records, who just seem to be doing a great job supporting like this Irish trad scene that we've seen over the past couple of years. Tell me about working with them, Cormac.
Yeah, they've been great. I mean, we'd know, like I'd know the team and same with John from working with Rough Trade, and they're really really lovely. You know, Jeff and Jeanette are just mad into music as well. They were they flown over for our gig in Whelan's. They're there when we need them, but largely they like creatively we kind of do our own thing, and then they you know if need be they'll say a bit or two, but largely we're left to our own devices, which is amazing. And River Lea, it's fucking, great. John Flynn, Sam Amdon has just signed up, I think, for his last record.
you vagabonds, it's so nice to be able to say that you're on a label with all your pals. That's lovely.
I'm guessing that Lisa O'Neill is another pal of all of you guys. You're supporting her at Southbank Centre's Royal Festival Hall in London in September. It sounds like it's going to be an amazing show. I got to see her supporting Pulp last week at the Three Arena. I thought she was unbelievable. I didn't realize she had such a huge voice. It really like filled up the arena. I don't know, maybe we'll just end, Ruth, by talking about Lisa O'Neill and just like how great she is, and I'm presuming how excited you guys are about playing with her in London in September.
She's a total legend, and we've been playing alongside her for years, since the days of the Grand Folk Club in the Grand Social, that around 2012. We all would have been there at the same time. So it's so nice to watch her just go from strength to strength, and she's just like no one else when she's performing live. Me and Cormac actually did a little support slot for her there in the CCI last month, so a little warm up for that. And John played with her in her band last
That was
week.
me on the drums at the Pulp show.
Was it? Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, great. Amazing. I mean, like, unbelievable. She just seemed to be so excited to be supporting Jarvis Cocker. I think that she's a huge fan, is she?
Yeah, she's a big fan. He's a big fan of hers. Like that, they specifically requested her. She's doing some shows with them in the UK as well. And like for me, it was like like I've been a fan of her work for years, but we only really got to know each other. We were both touring with the Pogues back in May there. So I was drumming and she was singing. So we were just chatting. We were like, "I'd be lovely to do something." And then she got on to me and was like, "Yeah, look, we've got this show in the Three Arena." So I had to find a babysitter because my wife was cycling around Germany at the time, and I got 3 hours to play with her, and we managed to pull a 40-minute set together. Myself and Jordan O'Leary, who was also on the Pogues tour, we basically just went in and just managed to get a set together really really quickly. Mostly you just have to watch her and listen, and just go where she goes. But it was super impressive to watch her work, and like it's really interesting because she delivers her songs the same way in rehearsals. All the kicks, all that physicality is there. She just like there's that's who she is. Like it's very cool.
Will you be pulling double duty? So in London in September, will you be playing with Lisa and with Poor Creature and support? You'll be tired by the end of it.
I don't know. Look, I mean,
TBC.
It was a lovely thing to do on a one-off basis. A total honour for me. We did a really nice cover of White Rabbit. You never know. She might want to break that out again. We'll see. But it's a very cool. I mean, look, we're playing in the Rough Trade record shop the week the album comes out. But really, that's our first proper venue show in London. So I mean, that's pretty jammy. So Royal Festival Hall, basically, with Lisa. You know, very cool.
Well, look, we've been talking for 45 minutes. I have so many more questions about like that Grand Social Folk Club route that you mentioned. John, your punk band with Ian, I could do 45 minutes on. We could talk about your wife cycling around Germany as well, which I'm very interested in. But look, let's call it there. Congrats on the album, guys. Sounds amazing, and thanks for the chats this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks, Owen.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Owen.